Okay, guys, good afternoon. Um, I wanted to go over some of the important sections about the Great Poop article and sort of walk you through it. So if you can see my cursor moving across the screen, I have highlighted some important things. Up here, it talks about that there was a crisis in London in 1858. And it tells you what the crisis is. So this lets us know that this is informational text because we've got a date, we've got a place, and we've got some information about a problem. And it also tells you exactly what the problem in London is, and that is, of course, the overflowing poop problem. So this, again, is a clue that this is a problem. Okay, and we're hoping, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, yes, that we do find out that there is a solution as we read this article. So as I continue on, my next section talks about exactly what the problem is in London and reiterates the fact that we have this poop that is so smelly that it's affecting the health of the population. So as we continue further on down in yellow, I have highlighted for you the next set of text that says, you know, what's been going on. And it says that Londoners have been dumping human waste into the River Thames. And it also tells you how to pronounce it. And I'm not really sure, but I'm giving it my best bet, Thames. And this is, of course, the river that flows through London, and one of the reasons why that it made London the center of the Industrial Revolution. So during this time, you have all of this waste, human waste, that got dumped into the river. And the article talks about that this is one of the hottest summers in recent history. And so all of this poop, here's a good word, starts to bubble, and then of course it stinks. Okay, so there again we have a source, a reason for the problem. Now as I scroll up, I'm looking at this highlighted text, and it says that the problem isn't merely gross. So that's problem one. It's gross. But problem two with this poop, it's also deadly. And then we go on to understand exactly what they mean by deadly when we talk about, it says over the past 50 years, tens of thousands of people have died from drinking the poopy, polluted water. So we've got problem one, and I may have gotten out of order just a little bit with my arrows, but problem one, of course, is the stink. It's gross. And then problem two is that it's quite deadly because the water is polluted and people have died from drinking this polluted water. Okay, so when I continue on to the subheading and this section about the problem of the poop, okay, what we learn in this section is that this problem has been around forever. What's the problem that's been around forever? Figuring out what to do with human waste. Figuring out what do we do with our poop. Okay. And then the next part that we need to go over, of course, is one of those vocabulary words that you dealt with. If you haven't done your vocabulary, then this should help you out. Intricate, of course. And when we talk about an intricate web, we should kind of get a clue when we think about a web. It's intricate. Well, really, what does that mean? It's pretty complex. There's lots of different parts. So that is using context clues with the word web. What exactly can you infer? I would think intricate would mean complex. Okay. As I scroll upward, okay, what we learn here is how was London dealing with the problem of the poop until the early 1800s. And it says that it was a pretty easy problem to deal with. They had worked it out, come up with a plan. And then it goes on in this paragraph to talk about what cesspools are, and then who a night soilman is, and then what this night soilman did with the poop. And I think I may have forgotten to highlight the word fertilizer, but that's another one of the words that you're supposed to know for this week. And if I were just to focus on this sentence, when they were full, the night soilman would shovel out the waste and sell it to use to farmers as fertilizer, because poop was known as something that would fertilize. You could sell it to farmers, and so even if you didn't really know what fertilizer was, I think most of you do, but you would know that it was something that would be useful to farmers who were concerned about making some crops grow. Okay, moving right along. I'm going to lose going down, I think, some of my notes, but I've gotten that a little here. Pardon me. Gotta go back up, not down. Okay, I've lost my focus here. Okay, so my next question that's posed that I have posed to you is because we've talked about how that in this paragraph, the poop was pretty efficiently dealt with in London. They had a plan in the early 1800s, but something has changed by 1850. Okay. This is where it says that between 1800 and 1850, London's population more than doubled. And so we end up with 2,000 people. Or excuse me, 2 million people. And it says that soon there was not enough people, night soilmen, and too much poop to collect and sell. And so the citizens kind of started thinking of another way to deal with the problem, because the problem wasn't being solved anymore and working. So they kind of came up with some creative ideas for how to deal with it. Okay, so by 1850, the population had doubled here, and there was just too much poop. Okay, so what two solutions did the citizens come up with on their own to deal with all the poop? Okay. It says that more and more people were forced to empty their cesspools into the city's creaky sewers. So they would take the poop outside and just dump it outside in the holes and in the sewage system where things would drain. And of course, where do you think that they were draining to? Okay. The sewers here were not really meant for that waste, and they were built to drain only rainwater into the Thames River. And again, when they started dumping it into the sewage, what exactly do you think it did to the Thames River? Okay, so that was one thing that they were doing, was emptying their cesspools into the sewers. And your second issue, because it says to make matters worse, that's how you know it's kind of another problem. You have this invention called the flushable toilet. And your waste could be washed away with the pull of a chain down into the cesspool, that hole in the floor where the poop was collected. But still, they had to do something with the cesspools when the cesspools filled up. So, to avoid a goopy mess, they began connecting their toilets directly to the sewers. And important to note, again, because the sewers were designed to just wash rainwater back into the Thames River, when they connected their toilets to the sewers, we understand that all of this poop was going into the river. Okay? So that was your question about what two things did the citizens do to deal with the problem. Okay? This question says, what happened as a result of the citizens' actions? Well, here we go. The river becomes overloaded with human waste. The Thames River grows thick, brown, and foul. And by 1858, we had a stinky crisis. Okay. So, next question. Vocabulary word putrid. Okay. Let's look at our sentence. I'll read this with you as we highlight it. Still, the great stink of 1858 was an odor more putrid than the city had ever experienced. Now, I've got this word odor, and I've got this word more, and so I'm thinking an odor more putrid than they had ever experienced, and I'm thinking, well, more, just an odor, and it's more, well, it's got to be stinky. So, vocabulary word, context clues, pretty good context clues. More, an odor that was more would be your context clues that would help you out knowing that it was really, really stinky. So, I've gotten out of whack here with my questions that I was asking. So I'm just going to scroll down. Oh yeah, okay, I made it now. So I had to throw in a question about the picture because sometimes on the EOG test, I don't think you guys get enough information by looking at the picture. So you got to take some time and look at this picture. And I did highlight some of the text that says when London's new sewer system opened in 1865, it was considered a technological marvel. What can you infer, aside from the words, but just by looking at the picture about this technological marvel? Well, I believe that I see a lot of guys doing a large amount of work, and so I could infer this was a very big project. A lot of work and a lot of human innovation or invention. Okay, so pardon me, scroll back up. But we did talk about the smell being putrid. And I wanted to just give you an example here of how the citizens reacted. Because I think, sorry, I left this point out. What did they do? How did the citizens react to this putrid, stinky smell? What did they do? It says here that they did two things. They started to faint or throw up. Actually, that would probably be three. And then the government officials who worked in buildings beside the Thames were seen fleeing with tears. So it's sort of like, have you ever cut up an onion, guys? And it starts to smell really, really strong, and it's so strong that it makes your nose run and your eyes water. So that gives you an example of just exactly how putrid the river was. I did not give you any questions for inferring what this is, but this does talk about the fear of the cholera and the epidemic of the cholera that had killed thousands of people already. And so these people were extremely afraid of getting sick with cholera. So we'll continue on and move on and talk about it. So the smell was making them sick. And also, what else was going on aside from the stinky smell and them being afraid of, hello, this is your next thing. They were afraid of also getting sick. Now, this is important, okay? At the time, it was widely believed that diseases were spread because of, you got a disease from breathing in dirty, smelly air. And this is called miasma. Okay, this talks about why, aside from having to deal with this terrible smell, that the citizens became terrified because they thought that they were going to get a disease called cholera. Okay, and this, briefly explained, is a stomach sickness that that came suddenly on very violently, and you would throw up, and then eventually, after you started throwing up, you would die within how long? 24 hours. So if there's dirty, smelly air, that's miasma spreading the cholera, and so they decided they did not want to suffer through another epidemic. Now here's the vocabulary word. London had already suffered through 3 major cholera epidemics and lost more than 30,000 people. And so they were terrified at the time that another epidemic or a large amount of death, disease-wise, okay, was going to spread. So epidemic is large amount of disease spreading. Now, there's a difference between, let's go back to the coronavirus, as everybody has to go back to the coronavirus at some point. The coronavirus is a pandemic, which is much, much worse than an epidemic, because epidemics are in certain areas, but the coronavirus is considered a pandemic because it has spread across the whole world. So, epidemic, we don't want it to become a pandemic. But it did when it left China and traveled all over the rest of the world. Okay, so let's see what else I've got. Okay, so I'm not sure which question or answer that I had put in, but here's the thing. The people did not know that miasma was not really how you got disease through the air. When it was smelly, few people understood that it wasn't the smell because they didn't know about how disease was spread, because we didn't know anything much about germs. But of course, we know today that the water contained a lot of the poop, which was crawling with germs. Okay, and what were the people doing? Drinking the water that was in this Thames River. Okay, it was the main water source. And when they drank the poopy water, okay, they were getting sick. Not because they were breathing the poopy smell, but because they were drinking the poopy water. Okay, so I'm here where I need to be now with the 2 ways that the government tried to fix the problem. Okay, so it says here that even if they didn't understand how and what was going on, they just knew that the stink was bad. And so they decided they would come up with some solution. And so here are the two solutions. All right, looking here, they decided that they would construct a new sewage system, which was running under the ground alongside the river rather than into it. I am almost done, so I'll be with you in just a couple minutes. So they decided to try to fix the problem by constructing a new sewage system, which of course, again, ran along the side of the river and did not dump the poop directly into the river. Okay, that was solution one. And it says solution two, problem that they tried to do was that they built treatment plants, and they actually decided maybe we should clean the water and we'll get rid of the smell. And of course, did it work? The answer is yes, because soon the sewage system opened in 1865 and the Thames River was poop free. Very important. All right, so moving right along into this section, they did have one final cholera epidemic in London in 1866. And somebody was smart enough to realize, hey, this is not in an area where we are connected to the new sewage system. And so they figured out maybe the cholera, of course, was connected to the poop and the nasty water. So this is pretty much the end of and the solution to the problem. But wait, we have to continue. What now? I thought it was over. Well, we have a new crisis. Okay. So the sewage system was a smash. It was a great, wonderful success. And around the world, people started replicating sewage systems in the 1800s. So what's the problem? And I wrote, oh no, okay, we've still got a problem. Over the years, the sewage systems, of course, since it's now 2020, have begun to fall apart. Okay, and because they've become rusty and outdated when they fell apart, they've begun to leak, break, and clog and overflow. And the waste is getting back into the drinking water supply. So here we have in this section a call to action. If we don't take action and repair the sewage systems that were built in the 1800s, we could possibly have another great stink. And more importantly, something that we don't want is, of course, another worldwide outbreak or epidemic or pandemic of cholera. Okay, last thing you need to know, that you should read about the fat bird, because I do believe I did ask you a question on the test about the fat bird. And you're going to see over here a section that we have not covered, and that will be for part 2 of this assignment for after we come back from spring break. So I hope this helps you understand the article a little bit better and that you'll score better on the test. All right, thanks, guys.